everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the release of the brand new Brad Pitt film, Bullet Train, which I was able to see Thursday night, made a review for it, and let's just say I highly recommend it. It is the most fun that I've had in a movie in a very long time. Even though Gun Maverick, I could definitely say, was the last film that I thoroughly enjoyed watching, Bullet Train was a different kind as far as just the comedy and the really quick-witted writing as well. It just makes it a darn good time. So fun, so entertaining. If you've not seen it yet, highly recommend it. We'll talk about its box office doing a little bit better than projections, though not by all that much, and why I think the film has a chance of being able to pull off what Elvis was able to pull off, which was having very strong weeks of holding from week to week because of good word of mouth. And it's looking like Bullet Train's having some pretty good word of mouth, especially in comparison to the, know-it-all critics, of course. And so it looked like that might actually have a chance. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about DC League of Super Pets coming in at a second weekend drop of 51%. We'll also talk about the films Nope, Thor Love and Thunder, Minions, Rise of Gru, Top Gun Maverick, and a bunch of others as well. Before going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. And also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So, of course, big news of today is Bullet Train coming out this weekend from Sony Pictures with a $30.1 million opening in the domestic marketplace. That is about $125,000 more than what was expected. And these are just the projections. So we could end up seeing Monday or Tuesday when the actuals from the weekend come out. The film could end up actually being a little bit higher than that. Could be closer to $31 million for all we know. What I do know is that Bullet Train is a lot of fun. It's got positive word of mouth, and it seems to be, at the very least, going towards and going with the projections versus going against them. And it's much better to be in the position where you're matching what people were predicting for you versus underperforming. And luckily, Bullet Train, again, I say luckily because I think it's a darn good film, is seeing pretty good box office numbers at this point in time, but not out of the woods yet, still has quite a ways to go to make its money back at this point. DC League of Super Pets, kind of a similar story as far as making money. However, right now, because of its second weekend numbers that we now have, I'm projecting that this film will be yet another loss for Warner Brothers, likely being a $50 million loss for Warner Brothers, which, let's just say, is not all that surprising, seeing that Warner Brothers has really struggled in the last couple of years. It was I think the biggest loser, if I remember correctly. It was the biggest loser at the box office last year, though it does have the HBO Max numbers that are able to, at the very least, keep the company solvent. It is still something that has at least garnered the attention of some people in Warner Brothers, and especially the Discovery Plus, merger with HBO, with Warner Brothers. I think you've definitely seen that comparison, or you've seen that there's been a change with films like Batgirl, for instance, even though it was finished production, finished filming, and in the post-production process just being completely scrapped, not even an HBO Max release. I'm sure that there'll be some fake campaign on Twitter or something to try and get it to be released at some point, but it's looking like Warner Brothers might actually start to be taking itself a little bit more seriously, because they can't really take this forever. You can't have almost all of your films, including DC-level films, in the position where they are losing money or are very likely to lose money. So even though its drop-off of 51% isn't terrible, it is not that bad at all, the fact that it had a low, and I think a much lower than what they had hoped for, not necessarily what they expected, but what they had hoped for box office last weekend, it is just not looking like it's going to have enough money to be able to make its money back. And we'll go into the charting about that in a little bit. We also have the third weekend numbers here for Nope, which made another $8.5 million, a 54% drop. So not all that terrible, but it is being stripped from theaters. Over 700 screens, almost 800 screens this film has been lost from, and it's almost at around $100 million domestically, which, again, compared to its budget, is not the worst thing in the world, but because we have no international numbers yet at this point, it's hard to say really where this film's going to end up. I think that once we start to see those international numbers and can compare those international numbers to his previous films, I think that only then will we be able to really tell whether it's going to get to that point or not. It's looking pretty good because domestically it's looking like it's got probably enough in the tank to push it to what, $110, $120 million or so, maybe? So that would mean it only need to make around 50 plus million internationally to hit its break-even point. So I still think it's possible. I think that the chance of it hitting where his other two films were able to hit, which were very close to each other when you adjust for inflation, the films Get Out and Us actually almost made the exact same amount of money worldwide. Even though I don't think that's nearly as likely in this case, we have to wait for those international numbers to know for sure one way or the other. Thor Love and Thunder, another 42% drop, so not a terrible drop, a pretty strong hold, even though it's been out for 5 weeks at this point, making another $7.6 million, 316 total now domestically for that movie. However, Thor Love and Thunder's problem is that it had a chance of getting to $700 million this weekend and yet did not. So unless this film has another $30 million in it, which, again, could happen, could not happen. We'll have to wait and see what these numbers look like in the coming weeks. But if it doesn't get to another 30 million or so, it could still end up losing out to a previous Thor film's numbers, adjusted for inflation to keep things fair, of Thor The Dark World. And if you are making a film in 2022, where you already made a film from the MCU at the very least, that made over $950 million in Doctor Strange 2, and then you have this film that might barely eke out $720 million, maybe at best $750, which would just be marginally better than what was made worldwide by Thor The Dark World. You're looking at a film not only having one of the lowest grosses of any MCU film, but also a film that is not going in the right direction. And I think that this film, especially in its box office, even though individually it's not the worst in the world because it is making money, it's made about, 20 million or so in net profits. We'll pull up the chart just for the exact number. So it is making some profits. It has made its money back, which, hey, at least it's doing a lot better than Lightyear did, as Lightyear was a massive $150 million loss for Disney. But even though it's not in that area, the fact that we're seeing this downward progression for the MCU films, we're wondering where are these audiences going, right? There's clearly 200 million or so, $200+ million worth of money spent by people that has not been spent on this film. Where did that money go? What happened to it? Is it just that people weren't going to see this film multiple times? If that's the case, that in and of itself is still a problem. Whether it's people not going to see this film who saw the other one, or people not going to see this film as much as they saw the other one, which not a lot of people were seeing the other one a whole lot anyway because it just wasn't that good, similar to this one. It does seem to indicate that the MCU might be in trouble going forward. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the fall, as we do have the next film, Wakanda Forever, expected to come out, and I'm personally projecting the film's domestic numbers will end up actually being quite impressive. I think that it won't necessarily get to the 700+ million of the first Black Panther film, but I think that it will still do well in various communities here in the United States, and I think that because of that, it will end up being a bigger film than it needs to be, and so it's going to be a little bit harder, I think, to tell exactly where the MCU film and the MCU, the entire MCU itself is financially from that film. We'll have to wait probably for next year's movies because those are going to be the real test, I think, because those are when we start to see the real full dedication to the next phase of the MCU. It's still not looking all that great, especially also compared to the number 5 film, Minions: Rise of Gru. Again, this is a film that's in a series, not only in the Minions series, but in the broader Despicable Me series, and it's making over $700 million. Again, well higher than where Thor Love and Thunder is right now. And even though it's got a week on Thor Love and Thunder, the comparison between the two is not enough for the film to be able to make that up in any way whatsoever, especially in the daily. So as you can see right here, Minions just barely making less than Thor Love and Thunder. And there's a good chance that weekend-wise, Minions could, by the end of it, end up ahead of Thor Love and Thunder in various ways. But Minions saw a 35% hold, and this is one of the reasons why it's having very strong holds every single week at over $334 million after 6 weeks of release domestically. Again, doing much better than I think anyone, including myself, would have expected. Top Gun Maverick making another $7 million, another drop in the teens. It's just insane. 11 weeks this film has been out. 11 weeks, $662 million. There is definitely a chance that this film could end up getting close to $700 million just domestically. And when we're talking about Thor Love and Thunder, just think about that. The film, Thor Love and Thunder, is trying to get to $700 million, and it will. It will get to $700 million internationally, or rather worldwide. That is done by Maverick just in its domestic numbers. I think that kind of speaks for itself as far as, the popularity of that film versus the not so popular Thor Love and Thunder. We also have Where the Crawdads Sing, making another $5.6 million, 25% drop from the previous week, now 4th week of release. So pretty strong holds there for that movie, which was able to make money break even last week. So it's now making a little bit of extra profits. All the way down the number 8 spot is another new film at over 3,000 screens from Universal. It only opened to $5.2 million, and that is Easter Sunday. And I've made this joke before, but I think it bears saying again. It's a film called Easter Sunday, theoretically about Easter, coming out in August. Yeah. kind of a little far away from Easter. Right now we're in I'm a traditional Catholic, so we're in time after Pentecost for ordinary form Catholics. That would be an ordinary time. And you have an Easter film coming out. So I don't know exactly what the logic was for that. I guess it was a film that they just wanted to get out. Didn't cost all that much, but it's not making all that much. So chances of it making money, not likely. We also have the film Elvis coming out at number 9, $4 million, a 30% hold. This is a film that's very impressive. I will say it. Very, very impressive. My numbers and projections were very wrong on this movie. Based off of those initial results, it was not looking very good for this film, but because this film was able to perform in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and now 7th week of release with these kinds of holds, it has been able to push itself past its break-even point and has gotten into the point of profitability. So kudos to Warner Brothers for having a film that actually made money. Not a very common thing for Warner Brothers these days. The Black Phone rounds out the top 10 list with $1.4 million, a 42% hold, which again for this rated R film is still pretty impressive. Now, Jurassic World Dominion, though not in the top 10, I do want to talk about because there have been some people who've been trying to say, hey, just wait for this film to come out in Japan. It's going to push the film to $1 billion. Well, it's made $20 million so far. In Japan. I think this is the second weekend in Japan. I think it opened to 12 million, and so it made another 8 million with both the week and weekend numbers there. Yeah, it's not looking like that's going to be enough to make the extra 40 million it needs to hit the $1 billion mark. This film is still a massive success, don't get me wrong. It still made hundreds of millions in net profit. However, $1 billion really not in the cards for this movie. I just had to get that out there because there have been some people that have been really harping on that in every box office breakdown that I've been doing. Anyway, Bullet Train, $62.5 million worldwide, as I said, doing a little bit better than projections. It was projected at $60 million, so even though it's not all that much more, that $2.5 million based off of the projections could indicate that maybe more people go to see it on Sunday than what they think, and you might actually see the film's actuals get closer to the $65 million number or so. Either way, I'm hoping that, and based off of the good word of mouth at this point, and what good word of mouth has meant for other films in the past, including films like Elvis, which had a very similar budget, I think that could potentially mean that Bullet Train ends up eking out some break-even and even profitability territory numbers for it. And as I said, and I will continue to say, it is well worth your time, and I think that you should go see it because it is just that much fun. DC League of Super Pets in the second week of release at $83.4 million worldwide. Again, because of its budget, not looking like it's going to be able to make its money back. Again, just drops have not been all that great for the film. And even though the film might not have the worst word of mouth, it looks like a lot of families are saying, I'd rather go see Minions, or I'd rather just not go to the theater. Again, just because there's no competition or very little competition at the theater does not mean that you're guaranteed to have people show up to a new movie or a newer film in any regard. The film still has to be good enough in its marketing, good enough in itself to bring people out to go see it. The film, nope, still waiting on some international numbers to save it because, as you can see, domestically, it's not all that far off. Again, it's right there, close to the middle of the pack for the projections domestically, but because of those international numbers, it's just not looking nearly as good as it probably will end up being as far as its numbers are concerned. Now, again, I still do think the film will be able to break even. It's just very hard to project at this point because there have not been any international numbers yet. And so even though my projections say one thing specific, I did say in my projections at the first 2 weeks of release that this film is going to be a bit of an enigma until we actually get some international numbers. Thor Love and Thunder, as you can see, still below $700 million. And again, it will be able to do that. It will be able to surpass $700 million by probably tomorrow. But the fact that it's looking at numbers this low in the span of the MCU when you adjust for inflation, compare it to the budget, etc., it's just not looking good, even based on the projections. Again, look how far below the projections this film is, and that's just in the domestic marketplace. Comparing this to some of the other films, again, some people try to say, well, yeah, the other films had China and had blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, you can try to, play that game. I look at the totals, I look at the actual physical numbers themselves, and I say to myself, hey, $700 million versus the $869 million of Thor Ragnarok. It doesn't matter if you have other countries that are involved in this because the fact still remains is that you've had massive drops domestically, internationally, in all the markets, and that is enough. Also, you have a much more massive budget in the $250 million, and if you actually looked at the film and watched the film, you saw and scratched your head and said, wait, where did that money go? Where in the world did they spend that money? It wasn't on visual effects. Because if that's what you get for $250 million, I would say, hey, you need to hire the people that made another film from years ago, from pandemic time, back in 2020, called Love and Monsters, which is a fantastic little film. $30 million. Look at the effects in that film and then tell me that the effects in this film are better. Or at the very least, that they are $220 million worth better. But the point is I'm bringing this up to say, hey, Thor the Dark World, one of the worst MCU films in most people's list. Until more recent times, I would say. The fact that this film right now is looking like, it may be able to pass Thor the Dark World's adjusted for inflation numbers, but the fact that that's even a question at this point is not a very good sign. Minions, on the other hand, just doing very well, even though its projections, again, it's not over projected, or rather it's not overperforming based off of their projections. It's not underperforming. It's still doing very, very well in all the markets. Again, over 330 million domestically, 420 internationally. Again, the fact that this film has a good chance of being able to probably get to or close to $800 million is pretty darn good. Top Gun Maverick, $1.352 billion, put this film very, very close to The Last Jedi. As you can see, the $1.36 billion, and again, this is the adjusted for inflation number here, is going to be passed by Top Gun Maverick by next weekend. And the big question, of course, becomes, when does this film reach $1.4 billion? Because it's very likely. The fact that this film's doing as well as it is, especially when you think about how many people came out to defend The Last Jedi and try to say it actually was a really good film, and again cost $100 million more than Top Gun Maverick. You look at these films, you make these comparisons, and you realize, you know what? It's a film like this that kind of shows you, you know what? Last Jedi really didn't. It made $1.3 billion worldwide, but that was still $700+ million less than the previous movie. And again, you ask the question, where do those people go? Well, I think a lot of those people probably went to go see Top Gun Maverick because Top Gun Maverick is a darn good time. Where the Crawdads Sing, $770.3 million. Easter Sunday, only $5.2 million domestic. Elvis at $251 million. Again, as you can see, actually going well beyond the projections for the domestic market, which is the reason why this film has been able to break even. The Black Phone is at $148 million worldwide. Jurassic World at $960, as I said. A lot of people trying to say, hey, you know what? Japan, I just don't see having another $40 million in it to be able to push to the other end. I just don't see it, especially when, again, opens to around $12 million now at around $20 million, 12 to 20, $8 million. That's including the weekdays and the weekend. Hopefully you can see why I have some doubts about the film being able to get as high as some people said. So for those that were trying to bank on that happening and trying to say, hey, just you wait, I don't see the argument that you have at this point. Paws of Fury. That's a film that happened. It existed. And it's pretty much gone at this point. Looking at the box office charting real quick to end the video, we'll go ahead and talk about, again, Bullet Train here, Easter Sunday. But we do have the second weekend numbers for DC League of Super Pets. So based off of the $83.4 million, we can project that the film will make somewhere between 119 and 166 by the end of its run. That's an average around 142.9. So we'll see exactly how much that film is able to make. Regardless of that, because of its $90 million budget, the film is going to lose somewhere between $63 and $34 million. So unless it has a type of hold that a film like Elvis had, or what I project a film like Bullet Train will have, these are the numbers that are most likely to play out. As you can see right now, it's looking around 84.9 million in the red. Looking at some of the other films which we've already done projections for, Nope's 97.9 million puts it 43 million in the red. And it's because of that I say, if this film finally comes out internationally, I think it has enough in the tank, or will have enough in the tank internationally, to be able to make up those losses. So for people who've been wanting this film to flop, or don't like Jordan Peele and would want it to flop, I'm just saying right now, those international numbers, I think, are going to play a very big part in being able to kind of right the ship at this point in time, because its domestic isn't all that bad at this point. Again, it's well within the range as far as the projections are concerned, and the international numbers we're just waiting on at this point. So again, even though I projected losses for this movie, I even made the caveat when I did that to say, but once you get the international numbers, that's going to change the story. And so it's almost like I didn't even want to do those projections because we're kind of missing a piece of the puzzle there. Where the Crawdads Sing, however, $77.3 million, $10 million currently, $10.3 million in net gain profits. Paws of Fury, as I said, is pretty much gone, $56 million in the red, and it's not making much of anything. Thor Love and Thunder finally was able to break even last weekend and has up to this point made $44.3 million in actual net gain profit. So you're looking at somewhere between $50 and $100 million in net profit by the end of its run, which is still very much on the low end, especially when you compare that to the $250 million they spent on the film. Again, they made the money back, and they're making profit, but as far as the return on investment, it's not looking all that impressive. Minions Rise of Gru, 757 on the other hand, is over $300+ million in net gain profit, almost doubling its first 2 weeks. Black Phone continuing to do well. Elvis, as I said, doing insanely well compared to its first 2 weeks. More than doubled what it made. Right now at $23.2 million in the actual net gain profits. Lightyear is essentially out of theaters altogether. $168 million in the red for that movie. Not good at all. Also, we have the $960 million for Jurassic World Dominion. And again, this film, $300+ million in net gain profit, that is very good. That is a very strong number there for Jurassic World Dominion. But the fact is, this film's chance of $1 billion is just not really all that. It's just not really there. Tell me where those dollars are going to come from, because it's not going to come from Japan based off of the drops that we've seen between the first and second week in that country. And then lastly, $1.3 billion for Top Gun and Maverick, $556 million in net profits. Yes, more than doubling its first 2 weeks easily, and likely to be the most profitable film of the year 2022, which is darn impressive. And if you've not seen Top Gun Maverick or Bullet Train, I would highly recommend the book. And speaking of that, have you seen Bullet Train? If so, what were your thoughts? Did you like it? Do you think it's worth seeing? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, lap that fire button. If you're watching on Odyssey, you're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my Keeper of the Bifrost and Chosen of Valhalla members over on Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals. Starting off with my Patreon supporters, we got Chris from the 80s, who you can check out on YouTube, Garrett Searles, Hymir Irie Hymason, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Laura, The Modern Major General Story, Father Luca Illick, Orange Hat Reviews, who you can also check out on YouTube, Rosetta Allen, whose YouTube channel's name is Eagle Rider, Stan Andrian, Miss Martin Muses, who also has a YouTube channel, and the Empress of the Universe, Tina B, who you can check out on her show that she does with the amazing Stephanie B, my Valkyrie, on a show called Soup to Nuts on Tina B's channel. Also to my Subscribestar peeps, we got Matt317, who you can support over on Twitch, same name, Storm Tracker, the R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can support over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my Locals members, we got Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player? We have UAB Mad Dog Mike Jackson for the win, Brett D90, and Robert Barnes, who most people should know about at this point, so go support him over at InfoWars, YouTube, and all the other locations that he is at. But if you want your name shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream, check out that top link in the video description. Finds out all the places that you can follow me on social media, and also all the various platforms that you can support the channel, which include not only shoutouts, but also access to giveaways of 4K titles, Blu-rays, tons of other stuff like that, digital codes, and then also a way to get access to being featured on the channel once a month for the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we're talking about movies, pop culture, and pretty much anything the Chosen want to talk about. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out the video description. There's also access to a podcast that I do with John the Flick Pig Flickinger once or twice a month. And don't worry, if you were wondering where the July episode is, because of scheduling conflicts, especially with John, we were not able to get that done, but we will have 2 episodes this month to make up for it, so don't you worry about that. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.